start.
All the way over?
From the beginning?
You said something so good.
No,
We'll
we'll know it better.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay, tell us one. Maui Wowie.
Aloha. I'm Alex.
I'm Luke, and we're actually talking about Oahu, so.
We start over.
We're starting over.
Are you still recording?
Mm-hmm.
Are you?
Are you gonna do a bloopers?
Just continue.
Okay. I'm Luke,
I'm Alex.
and we are talking about Pearl Harbor, Oahu.
And where to begin? Well, my first impression of Pearl Harbor, my expectation of Pearl Harbor was that it wasn't going to be a very valuable experience other than seeing the memorial and having said that, being able to say that I had done it. But once I got there, I was a little surprised to see the way that they portrayed the war and the causes leading up to the war, especially within the film that we witnessed, where they not only showed sympathy for the US side, but also sort of explained better the Japanese side as well. So that was good to see that it was a little more well-rounded.
My first impressions of Pearl Harbor were that there were no people of color visiting the site. It was clearly a predominantly American attraction, white American attraction, which take that for what you will. But I also agree with Alex that the movie that we saw before we went to the Arizona wreck was very enlightening and very equal-handed, is that a phrase? Showing both sides kind of the preparation and not villainizing vilifying the Japanese or heroifying the Americans. Jesus, this is so bad. I don't know, it was interesting. I think the memorial itself was less than I expected. I think I was expecting a little more. But it was solemn and it was interesting.
I think one of the things that struck me about the memorial itself was the lack of emotional response that I had. I didn't feel emotionally engaged with it in a way that I might have at a Vietnam memorial or something like that, and I at the time remember thinking that it might have something to do with the lack of coverage in education in terms of textbooks surrounding Pearl Harbor. All we really hear about is the sneak attack, and that's about it, and that's how the US entered World War II, but there's a lot more behind that. And I think just looking at like Kainoa's response to being there as a native Hawaiian, it was interesting to see how different people can view what Pearl Harbor stands for. And to that note, the actual wreckage of the ship where the memorial is built above really symbolized the infinite presence that the US military will probably have in Hawaii, and the fact that there's a US naval ship at the bottom of, several of them at the bottom of the ocean off the coast sort of symbolizes that. So that was kind of interesting.
Do you think that the military-industrial complex, you said that they will probably forever be here, no matter the state of Hawaii's sovereignty, which has been a topic that we've been addressing a lot on this trip. Do you think that there's any way for Hawaii to survive without the military-industrial complex, or do you think they kind of go hand in hand now because they're so integrated?
I think it's there's two ways of looking at it, in my opinion. There's one in the sense that will the U.S. ever withdraw, like physically remove itself from Hawaii? And I don't really see that happening because of its location. But even if that does happen, it's impossible to erase the impact of the militarization of this area. So I don't think that Hawaii can ever fully rid itself of that presence, and and that history, and what that history has done to change Hawaiian culture. And so those ships, to me, at the bottom of the ocean, are more about just America's sort of influence, not just physically being here, but the everlasting impact that presence we'll have, whether it remains physically on the islands or just in terms of this impact and change of culture and ecosystem and race, and etc. So I think that it's a forever lasting impact.
Later that day we went to a beach, which we all had a lot of fun at, but it was a local beach for a lot of the Native Hawaiian population, less of a tourist attraction, and it was beautiful, it was really fun, and there was a stark difference between Waikiki and that beach, not in just a sense of hotels and kind of manicured lawns, but also in a sense of a more relaxed and welcoming nature when it comes to the wide diversity and the range of people who were swimming there and kind of enjoying themselves in the waves. But it was a part of the island, that Kainoa said was less desirable, quote unquote, because it was the rainy side and the leeward side, which creates a lot harsher waves, and the sand wasn't as nice, and a lot more rains. So Waikiki is on the dry side, so that creates a lot of ideal situations for tourists, because it's always sunny and it's always bright, whereas it's always unpredictable at this other beach. Do you know the name of the beach?
I don't remember the name of the beach, but I had a similar reaction. I think that maybe it had something to do with the size of the waves or whatever it was, but it just felt like a much more welcoming spot than the chaos of Waikiki, and not just the chaos, but the synthetic nature of the beach. It felt like a place that was made for tourism, as opposed to this place to be appreciated as a natural beauty and spot to practice surfing, which is such an important part of Hawaiian culture. And it's interesting that locals choose not to go. I mean, it's not interesting, it's obvious why locals choose to go to this particular beach for where the waves are better, as opposed to the more manicured and constructed beaches of Waikiki. So it just shows the divide between the local culture and the tourism industry, and how that plays in terms of like geographic segregation.
And in contrast to Pearl Harbor, this beach was on the other side of the island, and there were no military industrial complex buildings, or there wasn't a presence in this area at all. So I think it was an interesting juxtaposition for the day, and something that we enjoyed exploring.
All right.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.